Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of Your Next 50, a show where we invite you to play big, to be intentional, and conquer those fears and those stories that perhaps are holding you back so that you can live the abundant life that you want and that you desire and that you deserve. I am Sylvia, and you will notice that my partner in crime, Jenny, has been replaced. She can never be replaced, but she could not be with us today. And I wanted to invite a friend of mine, Jahje Ives, who is an artist, who is a writer, a creative mind, and she's going to talk to us about the power of tapping into our creativity. And she has always been an artist, but she has a beautiful company that she has built. And we're going to talk about how she built it. Did she know what she was doing when she did it? And how does she use her creativity? And Jahje, your company, I'm not letting you speak just yet, and you will, but your company resonates with me because, as many people know, or if you don't know, I have a doula agency as another business beside my coaching business. And we work with new parents, and your company is all about the creating beautiful moments for new families with the products that you design. And she creates these lovely mobiles, these swaddles, using organic materials, and she's going to talk about that. So welcome, Jahje.
Hi, Sylvia. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm
Ah.
glad to jump into the hot seat instead of give Jenny a break.
Yes, and I'm sure she is going to miss out because we love the conversations with our guests, and especially when it comes to creativity. For those of you who don't know, Jenny and I met in music school, so our creative side is very strong. And I think this podcast, when we had the idea to launch it almost a year ago, was tapping into our creativity and perhaps not knowing what any of the rest entailed, running a podcast. We just thought, we both love speaking. We both love talking about money and manifestation and, law of attraction. Let's just start a show. And here we are. I think, episode 44, 45, whatever it is. And that is part of our creative process. So today, that's what we're talking about. So thank you again. So my first question to you, Jahje, was, have you always been creative? And this comes from looking at my children and seeing their creativity. And I'm wondering how that manifested when you were little.
So I'm a big believer in that we are all born creative. Children are the most amazing beings because they're pure creativity. Like no
Yes.
one has told them no yet. And actually, in my house, I go out of my way not to tell my children no, not in a disciplinarian way, but more in a like, is this possible kind of
Yeah.
way. Because the creativity that children have, it just astounds me. And I think that anything is possible. Uh, I definitely came in as a creative being, like we all do. And when I was a child, my mother is an artist, my grandmother was an artist, my great grandmother was an artist. So it's kind of like there's a matrilineal thing that was happening there. My dad is also studied architecture, but went into like the more construction side of it. So I grew up in a really creative household. And
It sounds like a book that Isabel Allende could write, Jahje. I don't know if you know her as an author, but she writes about
oh,
the matriarchal lineages of mother and daughters and grandmothers. And yes, I love that you come from a
yeah.
line of artists, and I resonate. My dad is an artist, my brothers are artists, my grandfather was a professional musician, so I went into music. And but I love that I agree the same thing, that we all are born with that creative side. And at
hmm
one point in our lives, at some point, some adult told you to put it in a box and put it
I
away,
know. Yeah,
right?
like it wasn't time for that. Like let's
Mm.
this isn't the appropriate time or place, but when is the time? creativity, it's always the appropriate time and place, honestly, because everything in our lives is creativity. The iPhone would not exist without creativity. Bank accounts would not exist without creativity. Everything is creativity. It doesn't matter if it comes out of a paintbrush or out of a computer or out of a mouth. It's like, it's all creation. And so, the more that we see that and tap into that and tap into owning our ability to be creative beings, I think we come back home to who we were, and give ourselves permission to play, which is a big part, I think, of my business, is that idea of giving yourself permission to play. I was actually telling you how I'm an overeducated artist. I have 2 degrees, both in art. I have an MFA and a BFA because you can't have enough fun in art
You
school.
can't. Exactly. I
Yeah.
loved music school. Music school is like the best time of my life. Like who playing music all day and singing and choir practices and just hearing them. Oh, yes, I agree with you.
Yeah. And it's like, and you get into the flow of being in that creative space. So I did that. And then my business started when I got pregnant. And I was
Mm.
actually a gallery artist at that time. Like, I had 2 galleries that represented me. I was making a modest living doing that. Plus, I was actually a professor as well, teaching
Okay.
video and drawing at Tyler University, which is part of Temple. And they wanted me to stay on, and I was like, I'm going to have a baby a week into the semester opening. I really don't think that's a good idea.
No, I don't think so either.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. So I said, why don't I take some time off? And then I, like a lot of new parents, got into the whole idea of creating a beautiful creative space for my child. It was my first baby. I had time, I wasn't chasing anyone else around. And I kind of went over the top. I painted a mural with my husband, who's also an artist. I also made a mobile. And the mobile was like the last finishing touch that I contributed to the whole environment. And when my son was born, people would come over, ask to see the baby. They'd ask to see the nursery. And then they'd be like, "Where did you get that mobile?" Oh,
Yeah.
maybe everybody can't do that. And so that was 11 years ago. And
Wow.
yeah, and Etsy is where I started with, like, the idea of, hey, maybe I should make a few of these and pop them on this platform I've heard of called Etsy.
You think? You think, Jaji?
Yeah. And so, that was how it all
That was the
began. And
start.
that was the
What
start.
a great start. And I think having children, and we were both moms. You have
Mm.
two kids, and I have
Hmm.
3. And I also made a huge change when I had my children. I became a doula. I was in management before,
Yes.
and that I think brought more, of my creativity, running a business as well. I, like you, did not know what I was getting into, but we are, I think, following our intuition, following that
Mm.
flow, that what lights us up. And where I was working before did not. So owning my own business, but I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
But just followed that intuition. And you have, if I've got your website here for those who want to go and check it out. All the moms on here, babyjives.com. Beautiful work. And you have said, yeah, you just went with it.
Yeah, I went with it with zero business knowledge, no business degree. I was a gallery artist, so I had an idea of the business of art. So I wasn't completely uneducated, but I figured a lot of it out on the fly. How to ship packages, how to deal with taxes, how to do all the things. And for a lot of years, I wore all those hats myself.
Mm.
Until I got big enough and had enough demand for my product that I realized, like, I can't handle this all. And so then I started asking for help. And one of my first real hires was my accountant.
Nice. Yeah. Isn't that like for me? I'm not,
Yeah.
I will admit, numbers. We have a money show. We talk a lot about money, but the
Hmm.
actual to doing of the numbers, I
Hmm.
farm that out for sure. Or, it's
Yeah.
not something I want to be responsible for. So yeah, that's
It's not
good.
something,
Yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say it's not something where my creativity flourishes. And
Yes.
so I really try to look at where in my business that I can lead creatively. And there's so many people out there. Like I said, creativity looks so many different ways for so many people. And my
Yeah.
accountant loves numbers. Like he's awesome with them.
But do you, but is your
Don't.
accountant creative? What's he doing with your numbers, Jahje? I'm teasing. I'm teasing.
He's not creative with my numbers, but he is creative with his
Yes.
dressing. He's always like perfectly dressed.
Right. And I love
Um,
that. Yeah, that creativity can come out in so many ways.
in so many ways.
Mm,
Yeah, and
yeah.
and it's like, and the flow of it. The flow is really something
What
that,
is that? Tell us what that flow is for
okay.
you.
Well, for me, the flow of creativity is when I get into a project and you lose track of time and you just sort of, for me, I start getting these ideas or these nudges, and when I ignore them, I usually start feeling more and more frustrated. But if I just go with them and follow them, um, even if I don't know where they're leading, they'll usually lead me to like actually the mobile that's, I'm like, I don't know which way to lean, but
Yeah, there.
this this butterfly hanging
Yeah.
above my head came out of one of those sort of creative daydream flows where I was in a garden one summer chasing butterflies with my kids. And I thought, wouldn't this be amazing if you could just have a butterfly garden within your home all year round?
Yes.
There
There you
you
go.
go.
Look at your office. It's
That's what
gorgeous.
happens. Yeah. Yeah, you
Yeah.
can see I'm like creativity outdoors. That's what drives my company because that's what fuels me is being outside and being in those zones.
Mm.
Um,
It's like that book Big Magic that came out by Elizabeth
mhm,
Gilbert a few years ago, talking about that creative flow and to
yes.
tap into those ideas when you
Hmm.
get them, because
Hmm.
if we don't, if we're being called to act on them, and if we don't, they will go to someone else, right? So it's
I
following
love
up
that.
on those.
Yes. That book. I love that book. And that is the truth. It's like when you get pinged for an idea, it's kind of like inspiration is tapping you on the shoulder. And if you don't answer that door, the universe is going to go somewhere else because there's all these beings. And, you know, that's why a lot of times I get into like the dark side of creativity is when people talk about copyright and copying and
Mm,
things like that. And I actually just recently shared with someone, another artist, who was going through something where she thought somebody else had copied her and she was really upset. And I shared with her that I've been there. Like we've all been there as creators.
mhm.
But that the place that I've gotten to is recognizing that big magic, that things inspire people at the same time. I mean, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs,
Yeah.
it's like they were inspired at the same time. It's the things that are in the atmosphere cooking, and it's you're a line of creativity. And it's like, I don't take it personally if somebody else isn't inspired at the same time with something and they do it in their own way because
Mm.
there's so many ways to be creative. And I also see it as if I show up and play the victim of poor me, this person copied off of me, you get stuck. You get stuck right there in being the
Yeah, the
victim, in
flow
being
just stops.
the flow just stops because the universe is kind of like, oh, yeah, let's sit and mourn with you for a while. I don't want to be in that place.
No.
I want to be looking at, where's the next thing coming from? I'm open for that. I always say, because I've had copyright issues where people have directly taken my items. And with those, I've taken legal action.
Right.
And when I do that, I release it. It's like, if it's meant to be settled, it'll be settled. If it's not, they can't steal what's in my head.
Mm.
Creativity is always going to flow through you as long as you allow for yourself to be that channel.
Oh, that's
And
so
so,
beautiful, Jaji. We
yeah.
know each other, Jaji. We know each other from a group we're in, and it's an amazing group. And we talk business together. We talk
Mhm,
manifestation. We talk law of attraction. We're all about raising our vibes and our vibrations.
mhm,
There's a lot of fear that comes up. And
mhm,
as we're running our businesses, I know I've dealt with it,
mhm,
and that you were saying you've dealt with it. How, do you? And you're starting. We're talking about the copyrights, but and even
mhm,
fear and perhaps lack of creativity.
mm,
I guess those are two different things. Let's go with the fear. Let's talk to those people who are perhaps too afraid. Like I did a music degree and then did a business degree because I was afraid that I would not make money doing my art.
mm. Um, I can very much speak to that fear because I think I've actually stayed away from certain things in my creative life, ideas that have pinged me because I thought, I don't even know how to do that. How would that even look like? Like, who am I to think that I could do that? And recently, I've been looking at those presumptions that I've made for myself and thinking about them in terms of who am I not to do that? Like when
Yes.
that fear shows up, you look at it and you go, people have figured this out before me. You know, it's like, what if Beyonce had thought, I'm just going to get a business degree because this singing thing, I don't know.
Well, I know,
Yeah.
and that's how I lived in my 20s. I was
Hmm.
really that fear took hold, and
Hmm.
later now I find, and I think there's an age related thing, and I have, stepped into my personal power. I share very openly that 5 years ago I was not putting myself out like I do today,
Hmm.
and that I had lots of fears and stories that I was telling myself. Right? Who
Hmm.
am I? I have nothing to say, but gosh, people who know me say I have lots of things to say. So why am I not sharing? Here I am
Yeah.
given this gift and not using my gift. And
Hmm.
for the music, that was for me a big turning point. Would I have been Beyonce? I don't think so. There's one Beyonce. I would have been Sylvia in a different matter. But now I sing, for my family and friends. But it's all good.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like what when fear shows up for us, we get to decide. It's a choice for how we show up for fear and whether we choose. I actually was thinking about this recently about how going to art school twice, I've spent a lot of time learning how to not critique myself after art school because
Ah.
art school is all about looking for the things you can improve, looking for the things that are wrong. I always remember in every crit group I was in, if somebody was too complimentary to someone about their work, the teacher would be like, well, but what do you not like? What can they
Oh,
improve on? And I
oh
was like,
my.
it's like, and that's kind of, as beings, we're taught, like as kids, you're taught, okay, well, that's good, but you could always be better.
Yeah.
And it's like this driving forward. And that can really squelch creativity, I think,
Mm.
is that idea of always looking for what's wrong and what can be improved upon.
Oh my
I,
gosh, yes. I went to classical music school, right? Music where
mm,
where every single note has to be in the right place. And I think I would have done better in pop or jazz where it's free
mhm,
flow, and but I didn't know that at the time. But yes. So where are we allowing? I think as parents, where do we allow? I go back to my kids, just
mm,
allowing them to explore. And
mhm.
as adults, going back,
Yeah.
pretending like we talked, I think, in one of our groups about imagination.
Mhm.
Why can we no longer imagine as adults? Like people have a hard time imagining.
Well, it's because we've been told that we're not imaginative. There's probably someone in our life who at one time has told us that we weren't that creative,
Mm,
or that's a dumb idea, or
mm,
something like that that is very wounding and damaging. And I think as adults, when you're I from my experience, it's been as I've been parenting my children through their childhood, I get to reparent myself
mm.
and fix a lot of the not necessarily fix, but like heal a lot of the wounds that I've taken on through those really like those comments that weren't necessarily meant for me, that probably came from someone who had been wounded by them. And so it's this idea that when we become parents, we're like so fierce about our children and so fierce about the world is going to be good for them. And we want the best for them. And sometimes we lose ourselves in that, like, because we put all our focus on them. But if we allow ourselves to draw back into ourselves and think about how do we want to parent ourselves at this time? Like, what do we want to say yes to that maybe was a no in our childhood?
Yeah.
And I think that's like when we become parents, that's why a lot of people go through this, midlife crisis or reimagining or shedding of things, because we're essentially looking at the stories that we've been fed as we grew by society, by the people around us. And for the first time, we're recognizing that we have the power to say no, to accept those stories or change them. And, and that's kind of like, it's really powerful when you reach that point of knowing that you get to choose.
There are no rules. I keep
There's
saying,
no rules.
I tell all my
Yeah.
clients, there are no rules. You want to do it this way, do it this way. Try it out. Just test it. And I find the pandemic has brought a lot of hidden gems, as I call them, hidden artists and creative people. They are drawing, they are coloring. The pandemic, we were stuck at home, so they needed to have this outlet for all their energy and emotions that they were feeling. And art does do that, no matter what. Art, music, creativity, drama, all of those things. And that I found was a silver lining of being at home and stuck.
Well, art is like that connection to yourself that's so raw and so visceral. And it really does, like, sometimes you just don't understand art, but you let it out anyway. And that's, for me, I'm going through a lot of that right now with my own art, where I've been making certain things and I had a lot of rules for myself. And I started recognizing how many rules I had for myself and thinking, why? Why do I have all these rules? And so I'm in the process of breaking a lot of those rules and playing and just seeing where it goes, like a kid again, just playing and not saying this is good or bad, right or wrong. This is just following like that flow, that energy, that creativity, wherever it takes me. Yeah. And
do you ever have moments where you the creativity, like a writer's block, an artist's block, and how do you get through those moments?
Yes, 100%. I would be lying if I said, no, I'm creative all the time.
All the time. Yeah, you are so wonderful, Jahje.
For me, I go back to the source of what not often inspires me, which is nature. Like, I get out in nature, I go for hikes, and I also allow myself the time and space to just let myself wander, daydream. I think a lot of times that creative block comes from we're pushing so hard for something that we think we want, that what is trying to come through has no space. And so just opening up that space and kind of creating the state of not expecting anything allows us to then have that inspiration come back to us. And playing, like when I get writer's block, because I write as well, or I just allow myself to kind of go back and forth. I love cooking. I love being outside. I love gardening. And I used to be really hard on myself and be like, you have to work through this. You have a deadline. And instead now I'm like, okay, it's time to step away and do something fun.
Well, it's a
or go play with
sign,
my
isn't
kids.
it? It's a sign. But how many we have these structures in our society with the, people here who, you have your own business or you work for someone else and you have to be there between 9 and 5 and at your desk and productive, and we're not productive 8 hours in a row at our offices.
No.
And we are definitely not. And I think the pandemic has shown that we can be just as productive in 4 hours of our day at home rather than going to the office all the time. As business owners, we have that luxury of managing our time. But I love that, because there are moments like in our group, as I was saying, Jahje and I are in a work group together. We needed to, there was a challenge to write this little song. and I was trying to figure it out at my desk right here where I work, and I couldn't get it. And then I was like, you know what? Forget it. I'll move on. Well, that night I went for a walk by the water, like you. Nature is up there in my values list, and it came within 10 minutes. All of the whole song just downloaded, and I was just singing it into my phone as I was walking, and I'm like, wow, wasn't that just divine inspiration right there?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I always think like you could slam your head against the wall, or you could step out and walk through the door and go find it elsewhere. Like,
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
so
And just doing other things. It's there. We kind of plant
yeah.
the seed. Our brain knows, our subconscious
hmm
knows we're working on this, but it's not always in front of a computer that we're going to get it.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
where did you get your most brilliant idea?
Oh, I don't know if I have a most brilliant idea. You know what? Actually, I'll tell you where I got my best-selling idea from,
Yes.
which
Yes.
is I have one swaddle blanket that is just a crescent moon, and it says underneath, it says "and back," and it's referencing that book, Guess How Much I Love You, which is I love you to the
Yes.
moon and back, but it's my representation of it. It looks nothing like the book at all. But it resonates with so many people because it came to me from reading that book so many times to my own children and having those feelings for my children. And so it's really like my best ideas are actually from emotions, from the feelings that I'm in, and then they'll become art that I want to send out into the world. And from experiences. So my best ideas never come when I'm working hard at my desk. They
Right?
always come when I'm in the midst of my own life and experiencing it.
Yes, and
So,
and allowing those, again, that intuition, that energy, that flow to come
mhm.
and say, "Oh, I just had, having an idea book." Do you have an idea book where you write all these ideas? Like, is that something
I
that you
I
do?
do. It's called my notes
Oh,
section
there you
on
go.
my
See?
phone.
See, it
I
doesn't have to be anything special. Just carry it
mm-mm.
around with you,
Yeah, I have an idea book, but that's because I'm often out walking and I'll just record a note like this
right?
is something
Yeah.
blah 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 blah, and then I'll get home and try to sketch it. And
Yes.
that's it.
Oh, lovely. Simple. Simple, but so
Mhm.
effective. So effective.
Yes.
May I ask what you're working on now?
Yes. Well, I'm working on a whole host of things. I kind of jump between my business, which is the business of families and babies making mobiles, and I just actually launched the one that's above my head is a luxe version of our butterfly mobiles. I thought it's spring, there's flowers everywhere, and so I created this like deluxe version that just launched this week, actually.
Nice.
And then I am like kind of working on a down low project on my own feed, which is jahjeives.com, or not .com, not yet. It'll be eventually, where I've really been like exploring this idea of we are all universal beings, and I'm doing all these drawings, and I'm kind of returning to drawing and painting, and I honestly don't know where it's going yet, but I'm playing with it and I'm following the energy, and I'm just writing and drawing and painting and playing, and
And having
that's
fun.
having fun, and I
Having
don't have to make a
fun.
business out of it because I've got my other business to support
That's
me while
right.
I do this. So,
Uh,
yeah.
well, thank you so much. I mean, I could talk with you for hours. I think we do sometimes in our groups, but it's just
Yeah.
been wonderful to get a glimpse into your life. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
Before we leave our listeners, and thank you all for listening, if you have questions for Jahje, just put them in the comments, and I will make sure she gets to them and can respond if you have something directly for her. What would be some advice for our listeners, Jahje, about creativity and tapping into it? And do you have something that you would share?
Um, well, I feel like it's the idea that I come back to a lot for myself, which is creativity comes in flows and bursts, and being gentle with yourself and allowing space for it to ebb and flow in your life is the best way you can be with it. And,
Mm.
you know, that whole idea of if you think of an idea and you think, who am I to do this? Just flip it and think, who am I not to do this?
Yay. That's
So
beautiful. That is beautiful. Who am I not to do this? I love that. I'm going to put
yeah.
that needs an art piece there, right there, Jahje.
I'll get on it.
You can take a look at Jahje's website and all the beautiful products. I have purchased them as gifts. They make wonderful gifts. My kids don't need swaddle blankets anymore, but at babyjives.com. And do you do commissions? Do you do special commissions?
I don't.
You
Honestly,
don't?
I
Okay.
keep so busy with all of the regular orders. I used to do custom. I don't have
Not
time
anymore.
for it
Don't have
now.
time. That's
Yeah.
okay. That's all right. Take a look at her website. Thank you so, so much. I look forward to seeing what's coming for you. And Jenny, my co host, will be back next week. And we are talking about courageous conversations. And that's going to be super interesting. We all need to have courageous conversations. And I'm sure just by me saying that, you know who you need to have them with. So catch us next week. We go live every Thursday. Please give us a like and a subscribe if you're watching. And we also have a podcast platform wherever you watch your listen to your podcast. You can catch us there at Your Next 50. Thank you again, Jahje. It was lovely speaking with you. And have a
Thank
good week,
you.
everybody.